our next topic we're going to be talking about this week is Syria. And when it comes to Syria, not the overarching thing, we do want to have a more in-depth conversation on Syria later, kind of break it down, because it is very confusing, because there's a lot going on there. But it's very important to pay attention to Syria. And right now, what is going on is actually Assad went over to go and see Putin. As we all know, Putin has been helping Al-Assad recently with airstrikes in places that Assad wants in particular. And this is something we don't necessarily condone, because when it comes to where these airstrikes are being placed, a lot of them are being placed in rebel territory, where we feel the rebels are the good guys. They're the ones who are trying to fight against Assad to take back their country, which they feel he needs to be out of power. So those are the people America's kind of been backing, whereas Russia's coming in and backing Assad's point, which Assad doesn't like the rebels or anyone else that opposes Assad. So all of the forces are bad to Assad besides Assad himself, for a general rundown. So Assad went over and spoke with Putin, and Putin kind of opened up the doors. It's actually one of the first times Assad has left since the civil war started. And so he kind of ushered him in, Putin ushered Assad into the country and very calmly just brought him in and sat him down and had some food and talked and chit chat. And a lot of people here in America and other people abroad are kind of wondering, one, why is Putin doing this? Why is Putin showing so much respect to Assad, and why is Putin backing Assad? And two, why are they bombing people who we feel are the good guys and many other people feel, are trying to do the best for them and themselves? Like, that's the reason why people are leaving Syria, is because once you actually graduate college or high school in Syria, you're actually inducted into the military. And a lot of people don't want to be inducted. A lot of men don't want to be inducted in the military because they feel they're killing their fellow Syrian brothers and sisters. So this is a very controversial issue. Why is Putin backing this man when all of this is going on? And that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the discussion here today. But another point that I think is very, very important to speak about is the actual human life that's being lost. And I want everyone to really, reach inside yourself for a little bit. And even though it's not going on here, it's very important to know how much turmoil is going on in this country. With numbers like 250,000 people dead in Syria and up to 1 million people injured. And when you're injured from the military, as we know from our veterans, a lot of those are missing limbs, very serious brain injuries and things like that can be very debilitating for a very long time. And up to 11 million people have been forced from their homes and displaced in some way in Syria, whether it be leaving the country or just having to leave their home in general due to war. This is a very serious thing. Imagine if you look next door and one of every other your neighbors is gone because they were forced out of their home by something going on in the government. That is a big deal. So when you're talking about Syria, make sure that you're trying to look at it from a human standpoint and not just, they're Syrians and they're Arabic, so they're all terrorists. And that's a very bad mindset. Just make sure you're open-minded when you're looking at these things and thinking about the human consequences. But when it comes to this, guys, why do you think Putin is backing up Assad? And I'm going to run straight over to you. I really think Brandon might have some good, information on this. So what are you thinking, Brandon?
Why is Putin backing Assad?
Yes.
Well, right now, Assad is Putin's...
You don't have an answer.
No.
I was really going to go to Sirena, but I wanted to mess with her a little bit. So it's a Brandon.
Assad is very much Putin's chess piece. It's strategy. I don't think Putin actually likes the guy, and that's only from body language I saw when I saw the video of Putin and Assad talking. When Assad was speaking, Putin was pulled back, but when Putin was speaking, he was a little more forceful. So absolutely, I do see Putin as pulling strings of Assad. And right now, it's all about the strategy as to where Syria is placed in the global map, not only between Europe and the rest of the Middle East and Asia and Africa, but where our interests have set, with regards to Jerusalem, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, So for Putin, this is a strategy move. I don't think he gives two shits about Assad. Or Syria. I really don't. But he saw that ISIS was beating the rebels, but the rebels were beating Assad. So they had to step in, and what they've done is and what I've understood through the media was Russia has hit the bulk of the rebels who we are backing, and like 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 ISIS targets as the foe to say, no, we're here to hit ISIS. We just disagree as to who ISIS consists of.
Well, just on that point, I am actually looking at where it's been mapped out the bomb strikes have been, and we'll try to get this up on the site so everyone can see this link as well. But the majority of the Russian bomb strikes since the 19th and the 20th of October, all the way to the 30th through the 30th of September through the 18th of October, like all of those bomb strikes that have been within there have been, from looking on here, 90% in rebel territory, rebel controlled territory.
And how I understand Putin justifying it is by saying Assad is the currently legitimate person in control of this government. Everybody else is a terrorist. It doesn't matter if the terrorists are split up between we're fighting Assad and we're trying to kill everybody on the planet who doesn't agree with Allah.
Yeah, they're all terrorists, yeah.
You know, that's how Russia is presenting it. Just because we don't agree on who the enemy is, I am still hitting certain enemies of ours to death. And I think that's how it's being handled. I think it's handled incorrectly. Personally, and I'm not a war hawk, but I think Obama needs to step up and say, either you hit ISIS and you humbly hit ISIS, or we're going to start hitting Assad.
What about you, Sirena? What are you thinking?
I've had a lot of really, really strong feelings about Syria pretty much since the beginning of this conflict. I can tell you that, 3 years ago, I was definitely rooting for America to get involved. And I'm like him, I'm not a warmonger. I'm not, being previous service member, having my brother currently right now in Kuwait, I'm not an advocate for let's go to war. But the numbers that you were throwing out a minute ago of the people who have been killed, the people who have been injured, the people who have been, displaced, those numbers would have been half that. ISIS wouldn't be what they are if we'd have gotten in then. Basically, this is a very, very sensitive thing for me. I've had a lot of passion towards it. Putin is making a power play. It is, he is asserting his authority in the Middle East, making his name there, making his way. So while we're putting on sanctions and fighting Russia in all of these areas, they're making new allies in the Middle East. And it's going to be very much, when they get ready to cash in, it's going to be, look what we did for you. America couldn't do it, but we came in and we did it. And as far as exactly what you were saying a minute ago, with where they're bombing, they have straight up come out and said, we are bombing all terrorists, not just ISIS. And it is very much the rebels we're going to take. They are, they're against Assad. They're all rebels. But for the most part, it's just a slap in our face. And one more point I want to make on this. I read an article today where Putin was saying that, and of course, please understand I'm paraphrasing, I didn't write any of this down, but what he said basically was if we had to come in and started bombing, Syria would have been lost to the rebels. Assad and the government would have been wiped out. America's been bombing you guys for a year, and we've accomplished more in the last 2 months than they have. And we saved Assad. We saved Syrian government. So he's already starting to plant that seed of where America couldn't come through for you. We were there. Very much a power play.
Oh.
So when it comes, Jayson, why do you think Russia's been so influential, and do you think that they're going to come to cash this in a little bit later on?
Absolutely. Okay, so for the first point I want to make, I think Brandon hit pretty much the nail on the head. For Putin, this is all strategy. This is all, a long game instead of a short game. he was ex-KGB. That's his background. So everything he does has a end game, and he's plotted it out in his head. So for him to do this, it is, and I think Sirena also hit that, this is about, him asserting his dominance. It's a power play. After all of this plays out, if he did the right thing, then he holds all the cards in a sense, because now it's like, remember when I did what America couldn't do, and America's supposed to be number one on this planet, and that's huge. No matter how you want to look at it, Putin is, a lot of things, but he's very smart and he's very tactful, and I think this is mainly just a power play.
And I did like that when you brought up the body language that Putin was putting into the conversation. I think Putin does that with everybody that he speaks with, no matter who you are.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, the very same way he did it with Obama. When you see him sitting next to him, he seems like he doesn't like the guy. It's not that he doesn't like Obama. He doesn't like the United States and the amount of power the United States has in relativity to him. So I don't think Putin really dislikes many people. He just dislikes anyone more powerful than himself, which is unfortunately a lot of people in America.
I think for Putin, the Cold War didn't end. It's still very much Russia versus America. And for him, it's all about winning that war. Mm-hmm. And to him, it's not ended yet. And
I would say it hasn't ended in this country.
I think for him, this move right here, I think he thinks that this is the end game and that this is what's going to win it for Russia.
Is getting more power in the Middle East.
Is getting more power and fixing what America tried to come in and do, but failed at numerous times.
Well, you got to think. Right now, we're seeing the most active Russia.
Yeah.
Military
since the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in Ukraine. They're in Syria. They're in Iran. They're in, China. Like, they've got fingers everywhere. Right?
Absolutely.
And, so Putin is a brilliant strategist.
He really is.
You can't knock the man for that because it's his own country. I disagree with him.
But that's also what makes him one of our biggest threats, is simply because of the brilliance that is behind him.
He's our Lex Luthor.
This is
He's our Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor.
I can go with that. Now, as far as his body language went and him liking or disliking people, I don't think Putin likes anybody.
Besides Putin. That's tough to say though, because you can't dislike someone and have a good conversation with them and still try to be tactful around them, because I think that comes out even if you have KGB training. You're going to be snarly with someone.
I think he likes anyone he can manipulate.
That's a good point. And what he said is, I think he likes anyone he can manipulate, and I think, again, that's why he's bringing Assad in. And that's why you lean away, okay, Assad, I hear you, but I don't hear you. But when I say something, you better hear me, and I'm going to lean in towards you so you know I'm speaking to you. So again, it's someone that he can work with in the future that's going to do what he says when he says, and I think that's a very smart move on Putin's behalf. But the simple fact is that millions of people are being hurt for this. And against Sirena, I was a proponent for going at war when it first started, because I'm like, they're bombing their own people, they're shooting their own people, they're gassing their own people. Like, their people want a change. But what I realized even then is to go in and try to win with the rebels, that means you got to go to war with Syria, technically. Because technically Assad is Syria, and if you want to be on the rebels' behalf, that's who you're going to be fighting against. And for us to do that would have been another war against another state in the Middle East. Now 3 out of the region, it would have been it would have just kept that ticking time bomb of what's going to come back to bite us going even further and further. So it's tough to say what to do in the region. Like, I would legit need to sit down with some military experts and really have a serious talk like what the president has, and that's probably why he chose not to go in.